Joining me today is one of South Africa's most successful and youngest entrepreneur, Justin Standford. I mean, you've been featured on the Forbes top 10 list of African millionaires to watch. I mean, I think what everyone would want to know is, what do you do and how do you do it?
Well, I'm a technology entrepreneur and a venture capital investor. So I've both built companies before, and I also invest in new young startup companies.
And just tell me more about how your journey as an entrepreneur began.
Well, it's quite a long story, actually.
Go for it.
In the early 90s, I suppose, was when I was exposed to technology, to computers, and about the mid-90s, the first internet connections were becoming available. And I just had a huge interest in technology, as well as in business and this idea of entrepreneurship. And back then it wasn't really common for young people to create companies in South Africa. But in the late 90s you heard about what was happening in Silicon Valley. There was the whole .com boom that was happening at that time. And you heard about young people creating tech companies and internet companies and becoming extremely successful in the early 20s. And I thought that was wonderful and exceptional and extraordinary. And I wanted to do things differently. My approach has just always been different. I haven't really followed the mainstream much. So eventually I actually quit high school to pursue that dream.
Speaking about that, I was actually going to talk to you about that you've totally redefined the fact that dropping out of high school is a dead end. I mean, yeah. Tell us your story.
Well, yeah, so for me, I felt at the time that this was now in the late 90s, that there was exciting stuff happening in Silicon Valley, and young people could create companies and sell them for a fortune and do extraordinary things that were outside of the bounds of what was considered possible and acceptable, and I like that. And I felt that the internet was going to be the industrial revolution of our generation. We were living through it. It was happening and unfolding in front of us at that point in time, but it was still the early days, so it was a sort of pioneering Wild West kind of environment. So I became increasingly more interested in that and the potential of that than I was in academics. I felt academics were slow and sort of rearward looking, and I was forward looking. So I lost interest in school and I focused on that.
So when did you drop out?
I was in I was 17. Yeah, standard 9, what's now grade 11. I felt that I couldn't wait for time to pass me by and for the opportunity to pass. I wanted to grab it while it was new and exciting and ill-defined, and I wanted to be a part of something at the front of the wave, not following through in the back of the wave. So I got so impatient that I eventually decided I have to just bail out and chase down the stream of being an internet entrepreneur. So that's when I eventually went through with that, and I moved to Cape Town on my own and tried to get started.
Wow.
Didn't work out so well initially, though.
Okay, what were the challenges that you went through?
Well, I mean, countless challenges. I mean, firstly, at that time, as I said, culturally, young people didn't really start businesses to begin with. Young people's opinions weren't valued like they are today. Things were a bit different. There was no community like there is today, startup community for young people and for the tech industry. There was also no Facebook, no Twitter, no blogs, no sort of communities online. There was nothing. So it was quite a lonely time. I started I had nothing. I moved to Cape Town with about 1,000 Rand in savings, and then just tried to tap into what little tiny network I had, because I grew up on a farm, so I'm not from the city. It was the first time I'd seen the city. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Got lost a lot. I started in a garage, and I mean, I was very young and clueless and naive, really. I mean, I knew a bit about tech, I had a lot of enthusiasm, but I didn't really know anything about business in truth, although I read and researched as much as I possibly could. So I made like tons of mistakes, lots of crazy and naive ideas, and so the first few business attempts just didn't really work out, but for good reason, and it's actually fortunate, because that's where I learned fantastic lessons about what does make a good business and what doesn't make a good business. So the difficult times, and it was about three years or so where I was really struggling and basically pretty poor. I was living off about 2,000 Rand a month. During those 3 years, it was very difficult and challenging because I'd left school with big dreams and it wasn't working, it wasn't happening. And that was difficult to reconcile, and I wasn't quite sure what the way forward was. But I'm most grateful for the difficult periods I've had because it's where I've learned the most and grown the most. So that was really the start, and then eventually in the 4th year, business number X came right. Which is
4DI Group, right?
It's what became 4DI Group.
Yeah. And what is it all about?
Well, 4DI Group is really the sort of holding company or the overall collective for the different businesses that we have. So where I started was in internet security because I believed it was a very strong piggyback trend for the internet. So my belief was the internet would be huge and everything would be connected, eventually would be connected to the internet, which is true today. I mean, you even have it in your pocket now. And so the thinking was, well, if everything's going to be connected, then everything's going to be vulnerable to being hacked into or attacked by a virus or infected or something like that. So I liked that trend. So the first few businesses were actually in that line, and the first successful business was all about we sold and we sell antivirus and internet security software online, Pan-Africa. And that's really where we started, was in internet security. But the group has grown since, and we've started some other different businesses in a similar realm, and we're still sort of focusing on growing that competency. But throughout the 2000s, what really grabbed me was the whole idea of startups and technology startups. And having made a lot of trips to Silicon Valley and seen what was happening there, I started to get quite interested in this idea of what was possible here in South Africa.
So Justin, like looking at your success, I mean, what would you say constitutes a successful business, and do you have any tips for people wanting startup capital to fund their ideas?
Well, I think a successful business is one that meets its objectives. I mean, everybody has different ideas about what they want from a business. I'm a high growth entrepreneur, so I look for businesses that scale rapidly and grow fast and can become significant. But for some people, they might just be looking for a business that can afford them a comfortable lifestyle. So I think it varies a lot. When it comes to raising capital, you have to understand what exactly that point actually, what is your objective with the business, because that will define what kind of investor you're looking for. We do high growth, early stage venture capital, for instance. So we are looking for the kind of businesses that can scale, grow large, go international, or continental, or something like that. So you need to firstly have a very clear idea of what your business is going to do and what your ambitions for it are, because it needs to suit the mandate of a given investor. So one investor might be looking for a fairly moderate, straightforward local business, and they're happy with that. Venture capitalists like us are looking for something quite specific. We have to tick certain boxes for a proposition to be investable. So I think before you go and raise, you need to understand what it is you're raising for, what your plans are with the business, and then who exactly you're going to go and raise from. Understand them and their needs to make sure that you're not wasting each other's time, and so that when you go and do the pitch, you can talk to the exact points that they're looking for and make sure that you address the sort of questions that they might have. Otherwise, you're unlikely to be successful.